This is the last video in a series documenting our great Trans-America Trail adventure. Into March 2024, Billy Oliver and I rode the eastern half of the TAT from Nags Head, North Carolina, all the way to the TAT Stop in Arkansas before heading back home across Louisiana to southeast Texas. Into August, we loaded up my KTM 500, EXCF and Billy's KTM 890 Adventure in the back of my Tundra and drove to the Great Plains Bunkhouse in western Oklahoma. It is there that we begin the western half of the TAT. And along the way, we picked up my father-in-law, who was going to serve as our support truck driver. Really, he just wanted to come along for the ride. Last time we had ridden from Delta, Utah, 352 miles to Burley, Idaho. On day 9, we left Burley and headed south, got back on the TAT, ended up there in Bruno, Idaho. Saw lots of those large 4x8 bales of hay and dairy farms in southern Idaho. It was a lot warmer than we expected. We had already noticed the smoky haze in the sky in northern Utah. If you were keeping up with the news or the post on the TAT pages on Facebook, if you're interested in the TAT, all during July and August and even September, there were numerous forest fires in Oregon and Idaho. We made it to Boise, Idaho. I was still having issues with my rear brake locking up. It had locked up a couple of times. Anyway, we worked on it in the parking lot of the hotel there in Boise before going to Buffalo Wild Wings. On day 10, we left Boise, Idaho, and as usual, we didn't know where we were going to end up at the end of the day. We just were heading west. Ended up, as I noted there, riding 242 miles to Boise. As you can see, there was a lot of smoke and just a haze in the sky. Made it to the Malheur, not really sure how to pronounce that, National Forest. Initially we were riding on Forest Road 16, which is a paved route through the mountains and the forest. We ended up on Forest Road 1665. Went from a paved road to a very sketchy, rocky section. If you've ever ridden the TAT, you know exactly the area that I'm talking about. There was some sort of brush about 3 or 4 foot high, and the trail was no more than 3 foot wide, sandy, rocky. Anyway, we made it through. We saw 2 riders going the other direction, one on a Tenere 700, another on a Husky 701. They were from British Columbia. Ended up riding 235 miles on the day from Boise to John Day. On day 11, we left John Day, and we were only on the route for a few miles on some good gravel until we started seeing road closed signs. Ran into a forest ranger there who said he was about to go write some tickets to people who were going around the road closed signs. He said that he was doing that, of course, for their safety because there was a major fire in the area. We ended up on Highway 380, also referred to as the Paulina Supply Road. You saw all the smoke and those pictures there. It did clear up somewhat. Went to Prineville, then Lapine. We ended up riding 281 miles in a day. We'll stop here in a minute at Crescent Lake. Day 12 was September 5th, 2024. We left Crescent Lake. Again, there were more closures because of the fires. We had to do major detours. Of course, we knew that because we've been checking the Trans-America Trail Facebook pages and, of course, watching the news. Saw several of these large camps where firefighters were staying who were dealing with the forest fires. Rode on Highway 138 in the Umpqua River. Ended up going through Glide, Oregon, to Roseburg, then on Highway 42 west along the Coquille River to Myrtle Point, and then Bandon, Oregon. At that point, we hit Highway 101 south towards Port Orford. Be back in a minute. First thing we noticed when we got into Port Orford was the very dense fog out over the Pacific. We stopped there across from the Crazy Norwegians Fish and Chips and ran into a guy on I think it was a KTM 890. He was a young guy from New Hampshire who was riding the Trans-America Trail, but who said he had been making a lot of detours along the way. Anyway, he knew how to get down to the beach, so we followed him. Ended up 248 miles on the day. Went ahead and included footage of the ride down to the beach. Because of that dense fog, my visor was covered in water, and so was the camera lens. It's hard to describe what it felt like when we made our triumphant arrival to the Pacific Ocean there. We did end up going to Crazy Norwegian's Fish and Chips to eat that night. Next day we loaded up the bikes and began our adventure back to Texas. That's a whole other story. Ended up 2,624 miles from the Great Plains Bunkhouse to Port Orford, Oregon. This was my one and only bucket list item. I texted my family to let them know that we had made it, and my son responded, "Most people go their whole lives without an adventure like that. Awesome." So true. I'd been planning this trip for several years and really wanted to get it done this my 60th year on Earth. I realized that I am indeed very fortunate to have had the opportunity to ride this great adventure. And if you're thinking about doing it, I encourage you to start planning it now. Don't wait till it may be too late.
500 or 690? This is the pod.
Now I just need to add something else to my bucket list. Anyway, thanks for riding along. See you next time.